Okay, so I am going to start by just kind of introducing myself so that you will know who am I. My name is Renee Collins. I'm certified as a public accountant as well as a financial planner. I have been in the tax and financial services industry for more than 20 plus years. I used to have a tax practice that focused on providing tax and financial services to small business owners, and I have since sold it. I sold my practice actually in 2018, and now I am the founder of a financial coaching and literacy company for small businesses and individuals, and it's called Retire Ready. So I want to, again, thank you all for coming out this evening, and thank you for allowing me to do what I love to do. And I love to educate and empower business owners and individuals so that they can live the life of their dreams, because you deserve it, and it is definitely possible. So what I want to talk about this evening is I really want to focus on the Paycheck Protection Program Take 2. Everything that the small business owner needs to know about the PPP2 program so that you can make your way through this unprecedented time that we're living in today. I'm going to talk about the application process. I'm going to talk about the deductibility, and I'm also going to talk about the forgiveness. And I just want you to keep in mind that this program is evolving. So while the law is in place, the SBA is consistently every day, literally today, I checked the SBA's website just to find out when everything was going to go live, because every day they're coming out with new information. So this is an evolving process. I want you guys to think about your questions and throw your questions in the chat box. And at the end of the presentation, we will go over them. I may have some answers for you and I may not. So just kind of bear with me. I just wanted to put that out there because it is definitely a evolving program. So the PPP program was initially created last year about mid-March. It was created under the CARES Act. And the premise of the program was really to help small businesses who have been impacted by COVID-19 to retain their employees or to bring them back into their businesses. And it was originally set up to last about 8 weeks. And then in June, they made some changes and they expanded it to over 24 weeks. So the Consolidated Appropriations Act of 2021 that was actually signed into law December 27th. It was a bill that was over $900 billion. $325 billion of that was allocated to small businesses. And of that $300 billion, $284 billion was allocated to the PPP2 program. So what do you need to qualify for the PPP2 program? These are the requirements. You have to have less than 300 employees in your business. You have to have experienced a 25% decline in your gross receipts in either the second, the third, or fourth quarter in 2020 as compared to that same quarter in 2019. So I want to define gross receipts. Again, this is hot off the press. So this literally came out within 48 hours from the SBA. And the SBA said that gross receipts is any income, whether it is your sales from the sale of a product, whether it is services income, it could be interest income, it could be dividend income, it could be rents or royalties. Whatever it is that your business is producing in terms of income has to be included in this calculation. Now, what gross receipts do not include is it does not include any proceeds that you receive from the idle, nor does it include any proceeds that you receive from the PPP loan. So those two items do not get calculated into the gross receipts calculation. So other requirements. So you must have had to use, or you will use, the amount of the first draw. So if you still have PPP loan proceeds in your account, then you must use those before you can apply for a second PPP loan. And the deadline to apply for the funds is going to be March 31st of this year. So the second draw. The SBA has a form, the 2483-D. It's not available yet. It may be available by Monday, but it's not available as of today. You can apply for the program under these requirements here. So the calculation did not change from the initial PPP program. What did change was the maximum amount of the loan. Initially, the maximum amount was $10 million, and now for the second draw, the maximum is either $2 million or 2.5 times your average monthly payroll. And in order to determine this, you actually have a few options. So you can either use your 2019 payroll, you can use your 2020 payroll, or you can use 12 months prior to the application to figure out what your average monthly payroll is. And the way you do that is you take a look at all of your payroll costs. And I'm going to define payroll costs a little bit later when we're talking about the forgiveness part of it. So I will talk about what's included in the payroll costs. So you're going to take your payroll costs over this 12-month period. You will divide it by 12, and then you will multiply it by 2.5 so that you can determine how much of a loan you are actually able to obtain. And you can obtain the lesser of the $2 million or the 2.5 times the monthly average payroll. Now, if you are in the hospitality industry, so restaurants, hotels, or industries that start with a NAICS code of 72, they are actually able to obtain 3.5 of their average monthly payroll cost. And you can also choose your covered period. And that is the period as long as it's between 8 weeks and 24 weeks. And what the covered period is, it is basically that time frame that you have to utilize the PPP funds. So as long as it's between 8 and 24 weeks, you can decide. And one of the things that as I go through this presentation is that you will realize is that it is very, very business friendly. So when Congress was creating this bill, they were definitely thinking about how can they help the small business owner to continue to thrive in this environment. And the covered period for all the PP loans has been extended through March 31st of 2021. So who's eligible? Sole proprietors, independent contractors, as well as self-employed individuals. Now, if you have not taken the PPP loan, you can complete an application and obtain a first draw. The requirements here are just a little bit different from the PPP2. So you have to, the maximum is going to be the lesser of 10 million or 2.5 times your average monthly payroll. So you can see that's a little bit different from the PPP2. The maximum is a little bit higher, or I should say a lot higher. And in this case, if you have under 500 employees as opposed to 300, you can apply. And again, it's for the sole proprietor, the independent contractor, as well as self-employed individuals. Non-for-profits can apply, and that also includes churches. So applying for both the PPP as well as the PP2 program, what is the process, the application process? So as I mentioned before, we don't have the application available yet. Now, the application for the PPP1 program, it is on the SBA's website. If you want, you can go out and Google I believe it's the 2483 without the -D. You can go out and take a look at it just so that you can get an idea of what is on the application. But majority of the lenders, they are creating an electronic version of that application, and their process is pretty much online. I haven't seen a lender that has a process that is not online. But this would at least give you an opportunity to go out to see what is it that the lenders are going to be asking you for. Some other things to keep in mind is that you're going to have some type of proof of ownership. And usually you can get this information from the Secretary of State's website, and you have to have an active status with the Secretary of State. The lender is also going to want to see some type of identification, maybe a driver's license or an ID, so you need to make sure you have that. Your payroll forms include your Form 941s. They may even include your Form 940s. A 940 is the federal unemployment tax return. And then also your state quarterly unemployment insurance tax reporting. The Form W-3, the Form 1099 miscellaneous, as well as a Schedule C. So if you do not have employees and you are a self-employed or independent contractor, you may be using a 1040 with a Schedule C. The lender will want to see your Schedule C as well, and then your bank records. And then I just want to add that the requirements may vary a little from one lender to the other, because the lenders are the ones that are executing this program. The SBA just guarantees the loan. So each lender may have its own requirements that may be slightly different from one lender to the next. So who's not eligible to obtain a PPP loan? Businesses that were not in operation on February 15th of last year, and businesses that unfortunately have permanently closed. They are not eligible for the PPP program. So deductibility. This is really a big deal. The loan forgiveness is not going to be included in gross income. A lot of people don't realize that if you have an obligation, a loan that you're obligated to pay, and for whatever reason you do not pay it, whether it is a mortgage, it's a car, it's a credit card, if you do not pay that and you are obligated to pay it, that is called cancellation of debt income, and it is included in your gross income. Now, the nice thing about this PPP program is that this loan, as long as you use it for the required expenditures, it's going to be forgiven. And the loan forgiveness will not be included in your gross income. That's a really big deal. And then also, any expenses and qualified expenses that are paid with the PPP loan proceeds that are otherwise deductible business expenses will be deductible if the loan is forgiven. And this is retroactive to last year, so it applies to both PP1 as well as PPP2. So forgiveness. So what costs are eligible for forgiveness? And again, I told you initially that Congress, their intent was to make this law as business friendly as possible. So the first two bullet points here were the same forgivable costs that were in the initial program, and they've since expanded it. So it's The payroll cost, it includes your group life, disability, health, vision, and dental insurance. So there was some controversy initially about whether or not the group health benefits could be included, and now they are. The mortgage interest, rent, utilities, that's nothing new. But what is new is the worker protection equipment. So this is new in the program, and this is great because it has really expanded what you can utilize the proceeds for. So the worker protection equipment, that really complies to if you have an office or a business that you had to adapt in order for you to comply with whether it's OSHA or the CDC, so that you can be assured that you are practicing safety for your employees or social distancing. So if you had to buy additional equipment for the pandemic in order to operate your business, that cost will be included in the forgiveness. Now, I want to make sure that I emphasize here that the 40-60 split between the non-payroll is still in effect. So you still have to spend at least 60% of the loan proceeds on payroll. Because again, remember, that is the original intent of the program, is for payroll, is to keep your employees on the payroll. But the nice thing is that 40%, the cost that can be included in that has expanded. And here are some additional costs that can be included in the forgiveness. And that is covered supplier costs. And that's just expenditures that you made to your suppliers. Covered operation costs. These items were not included in the original PPP program. So that is payment for business software, for the cloud software. If you purchase Zoom, you can include that. HR, sales, billing. So this is really just your operational costs that you can now include in your PPP loan forgiveness. If your business was impacted by the disturbances that occurred last year, you can also include the covered property damage costs, as long as that cost is not being covered by insurance or some other type of compensation. So now I want to talk about the forgiveness, the loan forgiveness. So for loans that are under, or I should say $150,000 or less, there is now a simplified process for getting those loans approved. And Congress told the SBA that it was their job to get this loan, this simplified loan forgiveness form, get it to one page. So these items here is what's going to be required on that one page. You're going to have to sign it, and you're going to have to attest that you were in compliance with the PPP requirements, meaning that you utilize the PPP monies for payroll and the other covered costs that I just mentioned. It will include your loan amount. You have to include the employees that you retained, how much you spent on payroll, and then you will have to include support for your gross receipts reduction. So if you experience a 25% gross receipts reduction and you're applying for the PPP loan 2, now remember, the support for the gross receipts reduction, that 25% requirement, that is for the PPP2. Okay, and so you will have to include support for that when you request forgiveness. And if you were in business all of 2019 and 2020, then you can utilize your tax returns for proof. Record retention. Make sure you keep track of everything, because the other thing that Congress provided to the SBA was about, I believe it was $15 billion, so that they can audit businesses to ensure that they're in compliance. So make sure that you are keeping your payroll records for at least 4 years, and then any other financial information that you utilize, make sure you keep that for at least 3 years. So here's some other provisions. One is the idle advance. There was a repeal of the idle advance deduction from PPP forgiveness. Originally, last year, when the PPP program rolled out and the idle program rolled out, under the PPP program, in order for you to get forgiveness, they would take out any idle advance that you received, which really just, to me, did not seem fair. And it was not clear when the SBA rolled out the monies for the idle. So I'm going to give you an example. Let's make the assumption that you received a PPP loan for $10,000. And you also received an idle advance of $1,000. When you applied for your PPP forgiveness, and we're going to make the assumption that you utilize the PPP loan for the qualified cost. So you apply for the PPP loan forgiveness, that $10,000. If you received the idle advance was deducted from that $10,000. So the $1,000 that I just mentioned, that would be deducted from the PPP loan forgiveness. So instead of receiving the full $10,000 for forgiveness, you only received $9,000. Well, fortunately, that has been repealed. So as long as you are using your PPP loan for the qualified costs or expenditures, your full loan will be forgiven. Other provisions that Congress put into place were set-asides for low-income communities. So I just checked on the AICPA's website, my industry organization, and it looks like the SBA is going to start taking applications as soon as Monday. That's what it's looking like, I think. And if that's the case, when they open up, the first 2 days that the SBA starts taking application is going to be set aside for low-income communities, women business owners, as well as veterans. So if you are in this targeted group, make sure that you spend your weekend getting your documentation ready.